both Trump and Musk are adventurers. And there you had them going down to this rocket launch, and it didn't all go exactly how they hoped and everything else. But wow, I love the ambition. I love the fact that Elon Musk is prepared to say, I met him in France earlier this year, and hearing him talk about why we need to colonize Mars, how we would colonize Mars, how we would get to Mars if we colonize it, was absolutely riveting. And you've got to have an amazing big picture brain. We've got to have an amazing brain, full stop, but you've got to have an amazing big picture brain to think the way that he does. And if he's right next to Trump in this administration, I'm all for it.
That's my situation too. And I feel the same way about RFK. I mean, he's also a preposterous person. He's bigger than life. He's full of remarkable and crazy ideas. And I'm fascinated to see what he might put in place. And I would say the same thing about Ramaswamy. Ramaswamy's establishment of the Strive Fund was brilliant and daring. And we have brilliant and daring people in government. And that doesn't ever happen. And God only knows. I don't even know if it's a good thing under normal circumstances, because I think under normal circumstances, you want competent administrators running your nation. But we're not in normal times, far from it. And so I'm, like I said, strapped in, waiting exactly as you pointed out, waiting for the adventure of this administration. Yeah, and everyone's sitting there thinking, oh my God, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, good. We should be thinking that, because we should be thinking out of the box, because conventional thinking hasn't got us very far. I'm always mindful of one of my favorite quotes in sport was Wayne Gretzky, a fellow Canadian, of course, the greatest ice hockey player that's ever lived. And his quote was simple: you'll miss 100% of the shots you never take. Right? I mean, simple as that.
Right.
I mean, that really is, to me, that's the difference in life between a certain type of person and another, is that certain people in life, they just take the shots and they don't mind failure. Elon Musk is going to see a lot of his rockets plummet into the ocean until he gets it right. But the thrill of the dare, of the adventure, of all of it, again, we'll come to this with your book because it's one of the big themes. But I do think that I feel like it's invigorating right now. It might be slightly dangerous and it might take us off on weird places and it might not all work. But I do feel the scale of ambition is going to be invigorating.
Yep, amen to that, definitely. That's exactly how I feel. And I also, you pointed out with regards to this book, that one of the definitions of God in the biblical library, in the story of Abraham in particular, is that God is in fact the voice of adventure. I mean, whenever people are discussing religious matters, one of the first questions that arises obviously is, well, what exactly is it that you're speaking of? What's your conceptualization of God? What constitutes the divine? And you could say the divine is the pinnacle of ambition or the foundation of reality. Those are both good ways of looking at it. And one of the answers in the biblical text is that God is the call to adventure. And that's definitely the case in the story of Abraham. And the idea there, which is an unbelievably deep idea and also one that works biologically, is that the full expression of the spirit that takes you beyond your zone of comfort and out into the terrible world is the same spirit that makes your life a blessing to you, that makes your name renowned among other people and for good reason, that helps you establish something of lasting value, and that does that in a way that brings benefit to everyone. And that's actually the deal that God offers Abraham in response to his willingness to embark on a life of adventure. And I think all of that's true. One of the rules I had with this book, Piers, was that I tried not to offer any explanations of the biblical text that weren't also fully justifiable from a scientific perspective, and usually from multiple different orientation places on the scientific side. And so why wouldn't the spirit of adventure take us out into the world in the most glorious possible manner? Like, what the hell else would it possibly be for?
Yeah, I agree. The other part of this, which is fascinating for me involving you, subliminally, is that you've become this kind of heroic figure for millions of young men who felt totally disenfranchised from society. And I remember the first time I interviewed you in my studio, and you got quite emotional talking about them and how you felt responsible to them and how many of them would come up to you, literally in the street come up to you, and tell you how you would sort of save their lives in many ways. And what we've seen here is, I think, in what they're calling the broligarchy, which I love, which is the bros, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Joe Rogan, RFK, Vivek. They're all bros, and they're the broligarchy. Is that you saw so many young men, whether they were white young men, black young men, Latino young men, but millions of them gravitating to vote for Trump because they bought into this general sense that finally there were a group of people here who were going to make you not feel ashamed of being a man, who were going to say that there's something great about being masculine, not something to be, to be shirking away from because apparently it's all toxic. That these are men in the old-fashioned sense. I'm very curious how you feel about that because you've been at such a vanguard of this. How do you feel about the broligarchy and the impact it clearly had? I mean, may well have won Trump the election.
Well, I don't think that the care that I've taken, let's say, with regards to young men is any different in its essence than the care I take with my son. I like my son. I want the best for him. I think he's great. I encourage him all the time. I like to see him move beyond his zone of comfort out into the world. And then I have all these young men who have been listening to what I've been saying, who are doing the same thing. And it's the best possible thing. I mean, I had a show last night in Westbury in New York, and afterwards I usually meet somewhere between 60 and 100 people, and many of them are young men, and they come to the show very dressed up, They often buy suits to come to the show, and they're like standing up, and their shoulders are back, and they're looking distinguished, and they've got ambition, and they're thrilled to death because they're doing something worthwhile, and, they shake my hand and they say, thanks for the help, and